All right, so welcome back to another week of Rideshare Rodeo. I'm really excited to have Ron on. It's been a while, and we're going to talk a little bit about just what's going on right now, and maybe hopefully a better year for gig platforms next year. But Ron, thanks for coming on. It's always really nice to have you, and it's been a while. So I get to end the year with you, and it's my 99th episode.
Wow. Getting up there. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, and Merry Christmas. And
same to you.
Happy New Year coming up here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't seem like it should be the end of the year yet, but it's probably a good thing it is.
Last year, I was trying to think. Last year, I don't even think I cared that it was New Year's. I knew we still weren't anywhere out of this. We were switching from Trump to Biden. It was like a lose to a lose. So it was like, what's really going to happen in this new year? I don't know. And so I just didn't really feel anything about it. But right now things are so crazy and upside down. I just feel like I honestly, I don't want to curse it, man, but I feel like next year has to be a good one. It just does.
Yeah. I saw a meme at the end of last year that, and then it popped up again on my Facebook memories or something like that, that it was like, how appropriate is it that we're coming up on a year that sounds like 2021,
I know,
like 2021 was 2021.
Right. Yeah.
And we lost.
No, I mean,
and so
we've got to start going back to normal, no matter how people feel about what. We've just got to quit going back and forth. I mean, especially when everything's just, this isn't political. This is just a fact. Like nothing's really known still. I mean, we've been told to mask like 30 times. And then you don't need to. Okay, mask. You don't need to. Okay, mask. I mean, like enough, guys. Like we know what everything is. We know that they build that really big around the holidays because people travel and you're going to be in different states. And then if there's an outbreak, they can blame it on the fact that people weren't masking and this. And it's just, it's getting old. I think we can all read the playbook now.
Mr. Miyagi, mask on, mask off.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's gotten ridiculous. And there's never, and we always talk about science, but there's never science behind it. It's just like, if there was, we would stick with one. It's like, and like Ron and I, if you guys don't already know from previous episodes, we were talking about before, but we live in the same state. At least our governor has kind of, I think recently, he was kind of unimpressing me for a while. I voted for him for Polis, but then he was unimpressing me for a while. And just recently, he kind of seemed to have that new attitude of, look, we got to be open. People have to just be able to go do things. And so even if we're still having masking, at least he's kind of loosening the reins a lot more than other states. And I like that.
Yeah. It was interesting. We drove a little bit before the holidays and had a family wedding back in Nebraska. It was interesting just to see, I think, kind of the differences as you go from place to place and, where they're a little more strict, a little less strict. I think, doing deliveries, I've tended to probably stay, even when they were laxing, letting off a little bit, I still tended to probably keep my mask with me on deliveries. And most of it, I think, was kind of for sake of appearance, because you never knew if the customer was going to get really concerned about somebody without a mask handling their food. So for me, it was just out of a courtesy. And it was like, whether or not it really made a difference or not. At least I was going to have the mask on just for the sake of some of the other people there, as far as what their concerns were and some different things like that. And especially in let's say a customer service type of role. And so, I don't know, but it has been really interesting just seeing, I think, just the division over it.
Yeah.
And it's been, I think that's been maybe the hardest thing for me the last couple of years is just to see us even more divided. And I wasn't sure that was possible,
Right.
but
No, but it
it's
is,
just,
and it's awful. I mean, it's going to be hard to come out of this.
it is.
Even
It
when
is.
things are really truly better and staying better, and we're not like pointing fingers at Omicron or this or that or the,
Right.
it's like when we finally start getting out of this, what does that look like? Is everybody gonna like go out and talk and be nice to each other, or is there still gonna be this like
Yeah.
bitterness?
I don't know. I,
It's, I mean, what you were
I'm
saying about
worried
the
that we're,
mask, I can totally get that, because if you were
yeah,
delivering food to me and I look out the window and I'm like, sweet, our food's here. And if you didn't have the mask on too, I was thinking like, okay, yeah, if I saw you coughing walking up, but like nothing wrong, you just had a quick cough, I
mhm,
still might freak out.
sure, you could.
Not me
And
necessarily, but you never know. That person
right,
might go, what the heck, dude? He just coughed.
right, right. Yeah. And I always thought that, at the point that I'm bringing somebody's food to them, it's not about whether or not it's right for you to force me to wear the mask or any of that stuff. At that point, it is like, it's me trying, bringing you your food and bringing it to you in a way that makes a difference to you, um, I don't know. It's just everything changes, it seems like to me, especially when I'm handling somebody's food
Right.
and perceptions, I think more than anything. And that's one of those things that's just always, I had a boss back when I was in telecom that, oh, I hated him sometimes, but there was one time we had a conversation that the customer was really unhappy and they were completely out of bounds. There was no question about it. And but he was kind of like, yeah, but what could you have done differently? How could you have changed the customer's expectation? And and I was mad because it was kind of like I didn't do anything wrong, which he was right. But the reality is, when you're running a business, is that you can't control what the other customer's doing. You can't control those situations, but there are things you can do to be proactive and try and set a perception and or to set, you know do what you can to kind of set the expectations, do what you can to control it as much as you can, and you minimize those possibilities. So I learned a lot from him on that. And that was something that I always tried to take into my, the delivery work, that it was kind of like, okay, yeah, that we can't do anything about those customers that are just unreasonable. Um, but there's a lot that we can do in the way that we act that can really avoid a lot of the problems too. And you and I were talking offhand uh, before we started this, and like you were talking about doing rideshare, and sometimes just the way you handle yourself and the way that you made eye contact and all those different things that really were proactive, as
Yeah.
opposed to,
I mean, being
just
aware
letting
of your
things
body
happen.
language is huge,
Mhm.
especially in rideshare. I would say actually now too in delivery, even though it seems to only really be specific cities. It's not as much like rideshare where rideshare always drivers get in situations a lot lately, but like Chicago, we were talking about Chicago recently, and like now Chicago delivery drivers are being targeted by like 16-year-old kids who are calling an order of food over to their neck of the woods that gets there, and they put the guy at gunpoint, either shoot him or don't take the car, but it's not even to strip it could be just like some old beater car, and they just go
Mhm.
joyride
Yeah.
and then ditch the car. I mean, it's gotten to that. So even the delivery drivers in Chicago, I don't know, every gig app I'd be careful of, because
Well, no kidding.
you're a moving target over there in all of them.
That brings up a different thought, which, getting off on a tangent, but these things that are starting to happen more and more often, you're just hearing of, drivers being targeted, different things like that on delivery. And so what do Uber and DoorDash think? This is a great idea. Let's start doing cash on delivery now. let's start having the drivers carry cash. Like
Right.
this is a brilliant idea. That,
Right.
one of the best things I think from a safety standpoint was because everything was done in the app. You never had to worry about whether the delivery person was driving, was carrying cash. But now all of a sudden we're going to start having customers pay with cash. So you got to carry change. You're gonna receive the cash. And now all of a sudden people out there are like, hey, he could have cash on him now. And that changes the game, I think, as far as safety and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just like, who thought that this is a great idea?
And who has cash on them that doesn't have a credit card?
Yeah.
I mean, so the person paying cash might be like, sweet, you take cash, cool. I've had cash for a while, and I got nothing to do with it because I always use my card. It's
Yeah.
like, well, it shouldn't be used in a ride share or a delivery service. Like let that be on the
No,
card.
no. It's just, it opens up so many potential problems. I think that it was just like, this is the second dumbest idea ever. And the first dumbest idea is Uber Eats saying we're going to start hiding information. But that's another tangent I could go down on.
Right. Well,
We're trying to go positive here. So
well, but we have to talk about where it's at to talk
sure.
about how it goes positive. I mean,
Yeah.
because another thing I was going to say is that, here we are ending 2021 and DoorDash is trying, or they're attempting employee status in New York.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means. Like, I mean, I know what it means, but I don't know what that looks like. Why? Why are you trying this?
This is something that, and I actually did this as my end of the year post in 2019.
Yeah.
And I called it my Christmas present to the delivery companies. And it was kind of like, you want to dominate in the delivery industry. And the best way to do that is to be great at delivery, because that's the big problem, that they're all terrible at it. They're all terrible at delivering a good end result. Everybody hates them. The restaurants hate them. The customers hate them. The drivers hate them. And so much of it is because they've got no control over the end result.
Right.
And so I said, if somebody came up with a model where they came at it with a logistics oriented approach, and that might require using employees, because to do that, you've got to have you've got to use employees, because you've got to tell people that, yes, you're taking that delivery, and yes, you're going to behave this certain way, and yes, you're going to wear the uniform and all that stuff. You can't do that with independent contractors.
Right.
And if somebody could come in and find some way to be just incredible at the logistics of it all, and I think that there's a way that you could do that even in a cost effective way. I took that further in that post back then. I said, maybe somebody needs to develop a hub and spoke model where you've got somebody that's just going around within a region and they're picking up the food and they're taking it to a hub. And then somebody else is picking it up from the hub then and picking it up with 3 or 4 other meals going to the same place.
Right.
And dropping it off. And if you could do that with an efficiency where you're handling several different deliveries in a very short amount of time, not like Grubhub saying, here, we've got 2 ice cream orders and they're 10 miles away from each other and they're in opposite directions, but something that's really efficient. I think somebody could just do a fantastic job of it. They'd have to be really big on the technology. And so there is a piece where I think that they could do that. But, the problem is that now in New York, where they're doing that, it's not the normal deliveries. It's some of these ultra fast deliveries. And there are a couple of places that have started ahead of time. I think Joker was the name of one, and there was another one. I think there were 2 German companies or something like that started out with this. And they used employees. And the reason that they did that was because to be ultra fast, they had to be able to tell their drivers that, yes, you've got to pick this up. They couldn't, put it out on the app and hope that it gets picked up.
Right.
And so that's the way they did that. And that's the model that DoorDash is trying this out on. It's not all their deliveries or anything like that. It's just this, super fast,
right. I saw that
store
that was
delivery
for,
type thing.
yeah. Was it? So it's groceries too, right?
I, I think, yeah,
I mean, because I
it's,
saw that something about like an hour delivery time in New York City, and I was like,
right,
what?
right.
So my guess
And I
is with
think to
that
make
is that
that happen
that
and to
small
say,
group
yes,
of
you're
the
going to,
employees has to,
right,
like, there's no dropping the order. There's no, you get it, you have to go get it and get it to them. And there's no, because people get to restaurants,
right.
they're like, it's crowded. I'll just drop this one, pick up another, or it's not
You know,
ready. I'm going to drop this.
and you compare that to like Grubhub trying to do this thing where it's like, we're going to get this delivery to you within so much time, or else, you get this, you get certain amount of your money back or something like that. And, and I don't see that working, because what that does is that almost kind of requires them to, well, what they do now is they send us the order the same time they send it to the restaurant, which they've always done that. That hasn't changed.
Right.
It's always been, we just notice it more now because they're so much slower than they were, 3 or 4 years ago. 4 years ago when I first started doing Grubhub, um, they were so busy that the orders kind of stacked up. So
Right. And the
it
restaurants
wasn't
were
happening
open
right away.
too. And the
Yeah.
restaurants weren't used to these orders. And this was all new to, I mean,
Right.
now everything's been shut down. They've all been running ghost kitchens only with these
Yeah.
platforms.
Yeah.
So they've gotten it a lot more dialed.
And so, Grubhub does this thing where they're saying, okay, we're going to give it to the driver the same time as we give it to the restaurant. And so the driver gets there 20 minutes before the food's ready. Well, there's not a whole lot they can do because they're cracking down now on drivers unassigning too much, and they're
Right.
deactivating drivers for that, or they're cracking down on drivers not going to the restaurant right away. Back in the day, if I had that happen and I knew that it was going to be a wait, just because you get a feel for it when you're doing delivery just all day every day, you get a feel for when you're going to be stuck with a long wait. And so it's kind of like, okay, I get this order right now, things have been a little bit slower, I'm pretty sure that I'm looking at probably a 20-minute wait or something like that. I can grab an Uber Eats or a DoorDash, real short $4 or $5 order just to fill that time.
Uh-huh.
And you don't dare take that chance now with Grubhub, because the way they're cracking down on this whole thing, and what they're doing is they're calling it fraudulent activity if you don't go to the restaurant immediately. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to control the drivers still. They're trying to treat them like employees. They're losing drivers, I think, more than they ever have before. Used
Right.
to be Grubhub was the place.
Yeah.
Grubhub was where you went first, and DoorDash and Uber Eats were kind of an afterthought. And now they've really gone the opposite direction, and I think they're going downhill more and more. And so they're trying to do this thing with ultra fast delivery, but they're trying to do it under the independent contractor model, and it's not working.
Right.
And it's going to be, I think, a disaster. I think you're going to see a big change in the next year. Here's my New Year's prediction.
All right.
Sometime in 2022, one of two things is going to happen. Grubhub is going to sell out, probably to Amazon, or they're going to go to an employee model, because Just Eat is doing an employee model in Europe. So
Right.
they're already thinking that way. I think Grubhub as we know it will not be here by the end of this next year. I could be totally wrong. I've been wrong about all sorts of things before, but I think there's going to be a big change with Grubhub in the next year.
Why Amazon though? What, I mean, I'm just curious, what would Amazon gain from Grubhub's database?
It's more that Amazon is wanting to get back into more of this delivery
Right.
type of thing.
So just having the
And
name.
yep. And so, Amazon, I think, is kind of the next, they want to be the next big player in the area. That's why I'm thinking them. I know that some of the big stockholders with Just Eat, Grubhub, and everything are really putting pressure on Just Eat to spin Grubhub off, to sell them off, because it's like they bought a lemon, you know. And so I don't know. I think Grubhub is either going to be more in line with the way Just Eat does things, and they're going to switch over to an employee model. Um, and if they did that and they did it well, I think they could pull it off. but
Right.
I have no faith in Grubhub doing it, or any of these companies doing it well, as far as actually pulling off the logistics. But that's where Amazon is a little bit intriguing, because they're better at thinking through this whole logistics idea.
Right.
And if they took over something big like that and actually put that logistic mindset, that could be a game changer.
Yeah. I wonder if it would be for the drivers though. Like I wonder if that that employee model would look appealing,
Yeah.
or if it's just going to be like, well, dude, I can go get a job anywhere for that if I'm just going to do hourly and
Sure.
W-2. I'm not
Yeah.
going to use my car. I'm not going to do this, do that. I mean,
Well, and that's where I could see them doing a hybrid thing, somewhat similar to what they do with Amazon Flex.
right.
They've got employees on Amazon Flex and they've got contractors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's kind of like use your employees as much as you can to make sure that you control that end result. But then when the contractors are available, you send stuff out to contractors as well or something. So,
Right.
and if
Can you keep them busy enough though?
that's, yeah,
Can you,
that's a good question.
because somebody that would go under that type of environment obviously isn't going to be able to drive for Uber Eats or DoorDash anymore or anything.
Well, yeah, and there is that part, because you can't really prohibit them from switching back and forth. But that's why, you kind of, for the stuff where you actually absolutely have to have certain things done, you use your employees there.
Right.
And then do what you can with it's the same game really right now in some ways, though, because it's like, there are a lot of times, in Grubhub probably more than anybody lately, is like, having trouble keeping the drivers busy.
Right.
And that's why we're getting the orders the same time as the restaurant, because there's drivers available. So as long as there's a driver available and not on a delivery, then we're going to get that order right away. And that's always been part of their algorithm, that, way back 4 years ago, it was the same thing. When things were slow, you got the order at the same time as the restaurant.
Right.
But when things got busy, then the orders were stacking up a little bit. And when it was really busy was when Grubhub was awesome, because you were just running into the restaurant, running out because the food was ready. It was usually really late by that time.
Right.
The customers weren't real happy, but that didn't hurt you as a Grubhub driver. But I think that's why Grubhub has done this about face, is that they've been terrible with the customer side of things, to the point that Uber Eats and DoorDash are better. And so Grubhub has lost market share. So it's
but they did so much better too in other ways, like the onboarding process. Like
sure.
I never minded that they had a waiting list. I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah.
Don't just onboard everybody, onboard what you need.
Yeah.
And I don't think the people who were put on waiting lists cared. They weren't like, oh,
and they were better at controlling the saturation too. With their schedule system, it was like, and they really, stuck to that.
yeah.
It made it a pain sometimes trying to get get your schedule set. There were some times where you had to be on as soon as that schedule opened up, as a partner driver anyway. It was 10:40 on Saturday morning, and man, I had to have that app open right then to get that, so that I could get enough slots lined up, because you weren't as likely able to pick something up.
Right.
But the weird thing is like, the schedule opened up, it got a lot easier to get onto the schedule, and it still got slower out there, which tells me that Grubhub decided that they weren't going to try and control that saturation anymore, that they were more concerned about having more drivers out there than they were kind of controlling it. And it just told me that the drivers mattered less. And it didn't matter if we were going to stay busy, as long as they got the order delivered.
Right.
And I understand that from a standpoint that they've got to get that order delivered. but they quit trying to balance that between the driver and the customer. And so I don't know. It's just, it has been fascinating to see them be the dominant company and then just totally fall off and become. Grubhub to me right now is like Postmates was
It's just like
in my
waiting to
mind. It was like it was the last resort.
Yeah.
And that's not a compliment in any way, shape, or form.
No, now you got me wondering if, changing my thoughts about the next year a little bit, like, because I was thinking after Lyft did that move a couple weeks ago about, Lyft and Uber are partnering, or Lyft and Olo are partnering, not Ola, not the rideshare company, but Olo, Olo. And I was shocked that Lyft was like, we're going to get in the food game now. I'm like, you just waited 2 years in the pandemic, and now you're going to like team up with. And I looked up this company, Olo, and it sounds to me like Olo uses Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub to fulfill their orders. So I was like, wait, that's a second middleman. So you're gonna team up with this company, and you're just gonna use the other services to deliver.
Well, they were doing a thing for a little while where they partnered with Grubhub.
Yeah, and that was when you said Amazon. That I was thinking, man, Lyft was going downhill so fast. Like maybe they'll pick them up, but it's like, can they? I mean, I know Lyft plays like they're doing best out of all these companies. We're near profit, this, that, the other, and I keep thinking, how you just had the worst 2 years ever on record for rideshare, and you don't do anything else. Yeah. How could you be doing the best you've ever done?
Yeah.
I mean, I know, you're probably saving on not having office space, things like that, but that doesn't cut out everything. I mean, I don't know how they.
The only thing that comes to mind for me on that is that might be more about margin, because Lyft and Uber have both been terrible on the rideshare side about really cranking up the fees.
Right.
While not cranking up what they're paying out as much, other than some of the really extreme promotions that they've done from time to time. But, that's the thing is, I think that they, I noticed this with Uber Eats one time, that it was during a snowstorm, and I went and looked up what they were charging. And all of a sudden they were charging $20 in delivery fees when it was usually $5.
Right.
Because there's a snowstorm going on. So I opened up the app. They were not doing any add-ons. They were not doing any surges. They were not doing any additional boosts. So they were not paying the drivers anymore, but they were charging the customer a whole bunch more. And they really carried that on when people started coming back to driving, and there started to become so much more demand than there was for drivers. So I think that Uber and Lyft have said, oh, hey, yeah, we can charge a whole lot more, and they're not passing it on to the drivers. So it's a profit margin thing for them. And so maybe that's the only way that I could think of that that Lyft could be claiming to be making a profit, because they're charging so much more than they're paying out. Unless
maybe, like you said, just like Grubhub, maybe Lyft is planning to get bought out by Amazon too. I mean, why not? It's bothered me because, I've actually talked about this a few times lately that, when you say Uber just rideshare, not food, but when you say the word Uber, you don't think of any other rideshare companies, but you do think of Lyft. I mean, just if you say, let's call an Uber, you do in the back of your head think, everybody knows Lyft is out there. So Lyft has a name that could fight Uber, but they just don't. Right. I don't really get it. They don't really ever, they're only in the United States. Now Lyft tried Europe. They tried Canada, but they're only here now. So it's like, you guys could, mix up the playbook a little bit and afford to take some chances here and, pay I mean, it's always easy to say this stuff. And, even if you have a W-2 job, you always want to get paid more than you get paid. You're always going to want more money than you're getting paid for whatever you do. But I mean, Lyft could try something where it tries a straight, no games platform, $1 a mile, something real simple with drivers that they love that might bring them back.
Yeah. But I think this is the one thing that is, like you said, you've been on the rideshare side, I've been on the delivery side. And one of the things that's been so fascinating with this pandemic is watching how hard it is for these guys to get drivers to come back. That it is like they played their games enough that they're at a point where it just feels like they've kind of reached a point of no return with a lot of drivers. That it's like they have burned the bridge to the point that they cannot get people to come back. And the part that is so amazing to me is to watch the delivery companies just follow that same pattern. That it seems like they're about 2 years behind Uber and Lyft in the way that they do things, and the way that they, the race to zero and
Right.
what they're paying out, and some of the other stuff that they, just the stunts that they pull off. And, I mentioned that earlier with Uber testing out in some markets that if you don't accept 5 out of 10 orders, we're going to quit showing you the restaurant. We're going to quit showing you where the customer is. And
Right.
it's like, that's kind of a deal breaker for a lot of drivers. And
That's kind of crossing the line of the independent contractor too.
well,
It's
yeah,
like you just passed up 5, so now you're an employee, but I didn't sign employee papers.
right. Well, and that's
know?
the thing is they can't force you to take these deliveries, but they can do incentives that would give you a little bit more for these things. And yeah, I think there's this kind of to me, it's a dumb thing to pull off in the midst of all of this stuff that is going on with, out in New Jersey and California and ProAct and all these things, where there's just more and more scrutiny on these companies. And these companies are really, all of them are really trying harder and harder to control the work of the contractor. And so it's like they're just inviting this scrutiny. And yeah, it's infuriating as a driver, because there's this piece, I do not want to be an employee.
No.
But boy, they are sure trying hard to get forced into it, aren't they?
Well, I got to wonder if part of it's that they know, like when they take their Prop 22 measure to, right now, they're actually doing this. They're actually putting together that fund again, but for Massachusetts now. So what, they're going to raise another $220 million. I wonder if part of them doesn't just feel entitled after they pass a bill like that. Like, you know what? Now we can do what we want because screw this. We just paid a bunch of money, and you know what? We're going to do what we want.
Yeah.
And they just kind of feel like we can now treat you even worse because we just got through that court case and you guys don't want to be employees. So just shut up and take it.
Yeah. 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 And it's just, it's amazing to me that you're seeing, I think, just more and more efforts at, they're pushing the line more and more. And it seems like it's just more and more dangerous, At the same time, what is it? Waiter and Bite Squad, they're owned by the same people, I think. And I saw that they started actually requiring an acceptance rate.
It's weird.
And I don't know if it's just that they feel like they're small enough that they're not going to get called on it. Sometimes I think you get some of these really small companies and they don't quite understand. I don't think they quite understand that independent contractor relationship yet, or the dangers of it. And maybe there's not as much scrutiny on them because they're not everywhere. And some of these little up and coming companies that kind of pull some stuff that like, you can't do that.
Right. Well, I mean, but all the big companies show them that maybe not the exact stuff they do, but they show them that they get away with stuff all the time.
Sure. But they also know the other things that where they can't cross that line.
Right.
And so they're, it's a very passive aggressive thing with these big companies, because it's like they know exactly what they can't do, where it's like real obvious, but they're going to push the limits as much as they can in some other areas. And so oh, it's just, and that's the other part of it, that is like, as long as they keep doing these things like this, this whole question of independent contractor versus employee is probably going to be out there,
Yeah. Well, I
because
mean, it is. I mean, I know that I've been having a few. I did another episode with Kim just like a week ago or something, on kind of on
yep,
the fly too. It was like something happened the night before we touched base, and she's like, let's get this out there. And I was like, all right.
yeah,
So we just decided to do it that next morning live. And it was, I mean, she's really got her hand. I really, I think she's awesome. I think she's
yeah,
just so awesome. She's down there like literally fighting these people, doing things that people don't do.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
she's speaking out during like sessions when they're like, well, we're only going to exempt the caddies. That's why we're here today. And
So
it's,
weird.
I know. And it's like, that's why I said to her, did you know that going down there? She's like, that's why we were going down there. Why are you just exempting the caddies? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And so she went up to her, her elected officials, and she was like, listen, what are we doing here? We're doing what AB5 did, that AB5 or AB 2257 had to like clean up, and is still a mess. You're just going to take one at a time and exempt them before you make the law. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing here? And it's, she brought up a good point. I'm like, yeah, but why the caddies? She's like, some caddies are 6-figure earners,
Mhm.
and they work for people that
And
make a
that's it.
lot of money.
That's it. They're involved, at least in circles where there's a lot of power and a lot of influence. And somebody
Right.
says, yeah, we'll take care of you, or something like that.
But it's just weird that you're going to have a session that you're just going to carve out that one thing, really.
No,
I mean, that's why I'm glad she goes down there and makes noise and gets all the press's attention on it, because it's ridiculous that they're even sitting down to discuss this and only talking about caddies.
Yep.
I mean,
when I first saw her come out, or the first time I saw some of, her tweets and everything, and I was like, yeah, all right. But then she'd say some stuff, and she still does from time to time. She says, you realize that not all freelancers are gig workers. They're not the same thing. And it's always kind of led this thought in my mind that it was kind of like, okay, how much are you on our side? Because if they were to somehow figure out how to divide the gig workers from freelancers, would a lot of the freelancers that are out there be okay with all of that? And in fact, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't, because I remember when AB5 was coming out, and there were a lot of writers in California that were like, yeah, this is a good thing. This is a good thing. And all of a sudden they realized, oh, they came for me too, didn't they?
right.
Like,
They got caught
all of a
in
sudden
that too.
my work, wait a minute. Now that it's infecting me, okay, I'm not good with this anymore. And it's kind of like, there's this thing that is like, if somehow freelancers were allowed, that it was like they were in the free and clear, would they leave the gig workers hanging?
Well,
and
one thing I've learned is that some of their own have left them hanging. It's kind of weird.
Sure.
It's like Prop 22 did exactly what we're talking about. It did take the gig workers the gig workers were collectively with the freelancers before Prop 22 was a thing.
Yeah.
Because everybody was like going, no,
Everybody
no,
was
no,
in it.
no, no. But so then they carved out Prop 22 for app-based gig workers. But then when they started, this is what even all these, Karen Anderson, Kim, all these people have told me too, is that they had this huge group of people. And as carve outs happened, those groups kind of left.
Sure.
Like, well, we got what we needed.
We got what we need.
Like, they really weren't in the fight anymore. And so,
yeah,
I don't know. I really like all those ladies, because I know that like right now, a lot of them could say exactly that to me. They could say, listen, you're part of that gig world that we don't want to be part of, but they actually do want us back. It's almost like they would like Prop 22 to either include them or be gone, because if it was gone, they'd have all these people working gig platforms back working with them. So I kind of get it that all these people were doing all this stuff to fight all this stuff, and then the state of California started allowing all these different, musicians. Okay, you're exempt. Okay, now all the musicians just left the group. They're not going to fight for this anymore. They don't care. And I don't mean they don't care. They still care.
No,
But they're not
it's
right.
not
They
their
got carved
livelihood
out. They're
anymore.
like, good, I'm good.
Right.
And I think that they did enough of that where that's a big concern of mine. I've told that to Kim a couple of times, is that I feel like they know how to get in there and like chisel apart a group and make you guys feel broken.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is, and that's one of the things that is very different probably when you get into, say, a national situation, because you can't do that referendum where you can put something up on the ballot. If they pass, all the stuff that they want to pass, PRO Act, not just PRO Act, but some of the other things that they want to pass, where it really does require them to use employees. You can't just put something on the ballot to change that. There's no option for that. The only way you can do it is through the Congress and the Senate and everything. So there's something that's very different. I think the other part is that's just fascinating to me is that when you've got arbitrary carve-outs, how can that stand up in court when it finally gets challenged? Because at some point, what that does is that says, and that's why I think that's something that probably is a warning to people that get the carve outs and they say, okay, we don't have to bother anymore because we're safe. I'm not sure you're safe, because here's what happens is, okay, let's say you carved out the musicians and somebody finally brings that up to court and says, hey, there's a problem here, because there's nothing that says musicians should be exempted from this other than somebody chose to exempt them. There's not any kind of,
there was some amount of money behind that group.
Exactly.
Is what it was. Once there was enough money to like go, okay, you guys got enough now, give it over.
Yeah.
We don't need the ABC test for you. Go away.
Exactly. And
you're lawyers. Right. That should worry those people a lot.
Well, it should, because what happens is if I get exempted and it's kind of like, hey, you can take that to court, and I think you could challenge it just based on that there is nothing fair about the fact that some people are exempted and the others aren't. And what that's going to do is either lead to the whole thing being overturned or the exemptions being overturned. Right. And all of a sudden, all those guys that got exempted are right back where they started from. And to me, the fact that you've got to exempt people tells me that this is not good law to begin with.
Right. And that's part of me worries about, and this is, I think, part of the great thing behind those ladies and the freelancers is that, like we're watching AB5 and we're watching Massachusetts and New York and New Jersey and all these states, and they're trying it different ways to go about an AB5 type thing. But the real big player is, and right now, again, I think we're in the clear. I've seen a lot of articles to the better, but it doesn't mean that parts of PROAC aren't going to be spread into things. However, that looks like it's kind of under wraps for right now. But I think that, AB5, Prop 22, all that, it would have been like a right to work state. It wouldn't have mattered if the PRO Act passed. It would have just said, it doesn't matter that you were exempt under AB5 because we're talking about the PRO Act now. Now you're right back to where you were, and forget California state law. This is a national law now. So now we don't need. You're right. You know what? Prop 22 and AB5 are gone. Don't worry about it. Now you have the PRO Act though in every state. So so that's where I kind of think that us gig workers are very lucky to have the Kims, the Karens.
Sure.
Because I don't see us gig workers down at the state house fighting like they do.
Well,
and
because
making enough noise. I know that
because you got enough gig workers that want they want to be treated like an employee. At least, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want the freedom.
Right.
But they want that minimum wage. and they want that stuff, which I can't blame people for wanting that. But, you know, the hard thing about that is that it's like, why didn't you read what you signed up for? Why didn't you pay attention? It's like, you can't sign up and agree to do business this way, but expect something that is totally outside of that agreement. And that's what's happened with so many gig workers, delivery, rideshare, both, that are like demanding this, the people that want to have strikes, the people that want to say you've got to pay a minimum wage, you've got to provide all these protections and things like that. And it's like, you want to really force the issue, then quit being an independent contractor.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the fact that you're not an employee, draw the line and say, no, this is not enough. That if I'm not going to get the employee protections that I want, that I feel like I deserve, then I'm not going to agree to do this job that doesn't give me these protections. And if enough people that want to be employees or want those employee protections, if they took that step, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, none of those companies would have enough contractors.
Right.
And that's
well,
the thing.
I very much worry about that. Everybody always asks me, well, what do you, and I feel like a broken record because I keep saying it.
Yeah.
When they ask me, what do you think that next step would be? I really, without a doubt, feel like it would be franchise model. I don't see any other way that it would work.
Yeah.
Uber's not going to deal with each individual. They're going to want to deal with like 10 franchises in a big city and only those people. And then let those people deal with the employees.
Which, we're talking about Amazon and Amazon Flex, and Amazon's kind of done that in that they took a lot of their people that were employees. And then when they said, here, we're going to give you this opportunity, and they gave them financing and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, these former employees now have what is essentially a franchise where they have their own fleet of trucks, and they contract with that person and their fleet of trucks and stuff like that. And it's kind of similar to that franchise model.
Yeah.
And it is such a weird thing, because when you get down to the fact that these companies need a massive workforce,
right,
and it's all very, very labor driven, that in its very nature kind of makes it like you should have, I think that in its very nature, in my mind, is still ultimately an employee type of thing. And so that's part of the thing that makes it a little bit harder to make that case, because it's like, if you've got a workforce doing the work of your company on a large scale like that, there's a point where I think you could argue the point for an employee status a lot more easily in the gig economy than you could in freelancers. Because with freelancers, where it's just picking up an article here or there. And so, but when you've got people that the majority of their money is from Uber, or the majority of their money is from DoorDash, it does make it a little bit harder. And there is a point where I think these companies are exploiting the employee model by doing this. And
I do too. I think of course we know that anywhere they look that they can go, wait, that's our advantage. They're going to take all those into
absolutely.
They're not,
and as long as they can pull it off, as long as they can pull that off, they're going to do it. And it's, and the evidence of that, I think, ultimately is in the fact that it's like I said, if you had enough people that were actually paying attention when they signed up and decided that, no, I'm not going to agree to these terms, because, if you had enough people, if the number of people that want to be employees that want the employee protections and things like that didn't sign up as independent contractors, that these companies wouldn't have enough drivers. That I think probably tells you right there that it should be that way. And part of it is they know that people are going to think like employees. They know that you've got people that are going to sign up and they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to take every order because that's what I'm supposed to do. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people on, Facebook groups saying, hey, are we getting a Christmas bonus this year? It's just all these different things. Do we get leave time? Do we get family leave? Do we get all of this stuff? And it's kind of like, did you pay attention to what you signed up for? And these companies know that people aren't paying attention. They're relying on that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the part that tells me that that they're not innocent here,
Yeah.
But then there's the flip side that it's kind of like, I guess, where I come from, where it's like, all right, I'm going to take advantage of what I just signed up to do. I'm going to treat this like a business.
Exactly.
I'm going to treat these companies like my customers instead of my bosses. I'm going to make my decisions on what makes sense to deliver and what doesn't make sense to deliver. And I would much rather do it that way. I would not trust any of these companies to be my employer. And, you talk about a toxic work environment.
If it goes to that state, I mean, there's so many other places I would go first. I'd be very upset because I don't want to lose it, not just because of these apps, but because of other places I see work for.
Sure.
Outside of this. I mean, it would really affect every part of my life. I mean, even my laser work, which, I'm still, obviously I'm not back on the cruise lines installing. I'm not back at Disney yet. But we're back to like a full load of work again, so even though I'm not on the road, I'm doing graphics again here, which through the pandemic was just next to none. We were doing nothing. And now we're like back to full load, and we haven't even got fully back to the cruise ships and all that stuff yet, which are going to need complete new programming overhauls and, calibrations, equipment replacement, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. So to me, even when all the freelancer group is fighting for it, I know how much they're fighting for what else I do too.
Sure.
Outside of the gig. So we really, we really need, if those people weren't there, I mean, we don't even know the PRO Act wouldn't have gone through maybe.
Yeah.
It takes some voices saying, hey, listen, you represent me. And I've had that pointed out to me a couple times, like how much my single voice matters if I go make it matter. And I know, I've heard that in the past, but I never really knew that, I think, or I never really took it as for sure, but that is right. Like they've made it, these ladies have taught me that, like, if you go down there and you say, hey, hold on, you represent me, that even one person, they're going to take that minute to listen to you because they're going to wonder, how did you and why did you take the time to come down here? How did you track me down? How many people do you represent other than yourself? They don't know all that. So they have to take you very, very seriously if you get in their face.
Sure. Yeah. I think, it's interesting to know what things would have been like, if not for some of that involvement. Fortunately, PRO Act was such a bad thing anyway, that I think it raised some issues anyway, taking away the state's right to declare themselves right to work, giving the union actually, a lot more power than any organization ought to have.
Right.
When it comes to,
and I think we're all pretty lucky there, because I think that a good amount of Americans, even if they're not in a union job, will go out of their way to vote against a union.
Yeah, probably.
Just like, hey, I worked for one growing up, or my family did. Some people have their views on it.
Sure.
And very few people are in love with unions. And the ones I think that are the ones that haven't really been in one yet.
Well, and I think that there are, I still see some things even today where having union involvement can make a very positive difference when it comes to, work environments and things like that. I think the
Right.
problem though,
Safety, that kind of, I see
sure,
that. Yeah, I see that.
sure.
It's definitely
Safety, just certain environments, that where people maybe don't have a voice or anything like that in those situations. And so I think from that perspective, I can still see some good things there, but I also see a lot of abuses there.
right.
I've got a daughter who's in teachers union, and in her situation, I'm not sure the teachers union has done squat for her, because it all comes down to her representative.
Right.
It's not necessarily that the union in and of itself is bad, but some of the people that are in the union. And when the union becomes more of a power structure than it becomes a structure that actually helps the people, that's
Yeah.
where there's a problem. And I think that's where a lot of the resistance has come up against it. And that's why I have trouble with some of the issues with the PRO Act, is that I think it enables some of the worst things that can happen with a union without necessarily promoting much of the better things of a union.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Well, I mean, and I think I honestly, like, I have family members. My ex is a teacher. Like, I think the teachers union pre-pandemic is one of the best examples of union. However, I think that the pandemic, even for the teachers union, dropped the ball a lot. Really made itself look a lot uglier.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
And I have seen,
everything dropped the ball during the pandemic, so it's
sure.
not a diss on anything. It's, I just feel like the teachers union even like got to the point where they weren't the shining example that they used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, just in education altogether, it's like, yeah, the pandemic, it was like, okay, well, we need to have school. We need to, protect the kids. And nowhere in the middle of that was, we need to protect the teachers also.
Right.
And that's, yeah, that's, and I think that's something that could land at the feet of the union and land at the feet of the administration.
Right.
I think both dropped the ball there. And so, yeah, I got way off on unions there, didn't we?
Well, then, I mean, that happens when we talk about this stuff, because I think,
That's
and
true.
I never mind, because I always don't think that the gig workers really understand what was being trying to be done on them. Like,
Right.
had PRO Act happened, I think that people would have just been like, wait, what? Excuse me? Like, it would have
You
been
know,
beyond a wake-up call. It wouldn't have been like, oh, we saw this coming. Okay, I'm ready for it. I think people would have just been like, wait, I can't do anything anymore.
I think the
I
part that,
can't work for myself. I can't go out and just earn some money. I can't, like,
yeah, I think the part that bothers me or concerns me is that I don't see any attempt to actually police what's going on. I
right,
don't see it, it's like they couldn't give a rat's behind about whether or not Uber or DoorDash are crossing the line this way or that way. They're not going to try and stop them from doing that. The only thing that they want to do is to force them to use employees.
right,
And it's like, why can't there be something in between? Why can't you instead kind of police that control aspect of things? And I think that's part of the problem I have with this whole one or the other type of thing, that mindset. It's got to be employee or it's got to be independent contractor. Why can't we try and enforce what the rules are already in place, or
right.
better define the rules as to how they can treat their contractors, and
None of us want to hear
that's
the
what I
word
would rather see.
regulation, and I always try and go
Yeah,
around it. But to be honest,
sure.
I think we need some cyber regulation.
Sure.
in the
Sure.
gig economy. I think we
And
just need, it doesn't need to be so hardcore that it ends it, but there needs to be
no,
some people who are going, nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that.
if nothing else, introduce some due process around the whole deactivation process.
Right.
You know, it's right now, it's the computer sees something that doesn't look right, and you get somebody, supposedly you're supposed to have somebody take a live look at it, and all they do is they look at the report in the computer and say, oh, yep, they're out of there, and somebody's deactivated, whether they deserve to be or not.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that deserve to be, you know, that's part of the problem. But there's a lot of people that they get because something just looked out of line to the computer. And there's no due process. There's no way to get somebody to answer and say, oh, why exactly were you deactivated? What exactly was that contract violation that made it so bad that we can't do anything with you anymore? And if you could clean that up, if you could create some due process, if you could at least have them able to answer to something without having to go to a lawyer or something like that. And just like, if they say that you did something wrong, then it's like, you know, they've got to show you exactly what it is and how you did it and what they did to try and prevent that from being an issue to begin with. And I think that would eliminate a lot of the issues. And I think it would also kind of back off on some of their efforts to control drivers illegally too.
Right.
But you could do that without forcing everybody to be an employee.
Yeah. The other part though, that you already said even, is that, you know, like, look at what you're signing up for, people.
Yeah.
Like, I got to go back to
That's
that too, because that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're just going, listen, what do you mean? I don't want that. Well, okay, but you agreed to it.
Yep. That's just it. It's
I know none of you read the TOS. I'm not shaming any of you before that. However, if you go back and read it, your question probably gets answered.
Yeah. You know, and maybe that's something that they ought to do a little bit more, is that instead of just saying, okay, you click, I agree to the terms of service, and whoever reads the terms when they click on that, and that's about as simple as it becomes anymore. And instead going through and just putting some very basic things. I understand I'm not an employee, and you got to sign off on that before you go to the next part.
Right.
And
Or
it's like,
make it like the rain videos.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like, you can blow them off because you have to do them every 6 months or a year. You can blow it off and just do it and watch it and turn the volume off and not even listen and go to the next. But at least they're giving you 6 or 5 different videos you have to watch that are 2 to 3 minutes each, that do
And
have
you've
some
got to
information
take
if you don't
action
want
on
to.
each
Yeah.
one of those to say, yeah, okay, I get it. I understand that. And you move on and you sign off. You say, I understand I'm on my own for taxes.
Right.
Okay. I understand that
It seems
I'm
like it would
free
be
to
just fine for them to do the
do
same thing
whatever.
as rain and make like a 5-part TOS.
Mhm.
And each time you pass one, you're agreeing to that part.
Yeah.
Do you agree
Yeah.
to this or not? And if you don't, then you don't go any farther.
And then at that point, it's like, well, I think it's already that way, but it's like, if you didn't pay attention then, I got no sympathy for you. It's like, but you know, here's the deal. Let's say I make an arrangement with you. Hey, I want to have you come over. I want to have you do some graphics for my website. Okay.
Mhm.
And you say, okay, I'll do that. And we make an agreement. And then when you get done, you say, oh, and I should be getting this much more. You should also, you know, say you agree that you're going to do something for $500. And then you come back and you say, oh, and also you also owe me this. You know, you're asking for more than what you agreed to.
Right.
And that's what a lot of gig workers are doing when they're saying, okay, I want this minimum wage. It's like, you didn't agree to that.
Right.
And you know, and that's what I think people need to understand, is you signed up to do this as a business, and it's not it's not necessarily a bad thing. Anytime you open up a business, there's no guarantees. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I could open up, over not too far from where I live. I remember Lowe's spent a lot of money refurbishing this shopping center and building a new store. Within a year, it was closed. And it was just kind of like, that was pretty dumb. I could have told you that was a bad area to build. And that's what happens when you open a business. There's no guarantee that you're going to make it.
Most
And I
most
can open up
don't.
a restaurant or a store or
Most don't make it.
a website. Exactly.
That's
Most
what
of them
people
don't
forget
make
when
it.
you go work for yourself on these apps. Like most businesses don't make it.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to people understand that you're signing up as a business. And that means you've got no guarantees. You've got no protection. You're completely on your own. But I'll tell you what, the upside could be incredible.
Yeah.
If you treat it like a business and if you take control for yourself. And I think that's the thing that I would say if you wanted to get into a new year, the best New Year's resolution that I think anybody could make in the gig economy is just to say, I'm taking control. And, I used to listen quite a bit, haven't as much lately, to Gary Vee or Gary Vaynerchuk. And he always used to use this line that said, when you're in business for yourself, everything is your fault. But he said, that's a good thing because that means you're in control.
Right.
And he said, even if everything, let's say you had an employee that just totally screwed up. Well, it's your fault because you hired them, you know,
Yep.
if things went south on a sale, if you weren't paying attention, there's accountability in all of that, but it can be a great thing as well. And so, if I go out and do deliveries and I go out on Christmas Day when nothing is open and I accept everything without paying attention to whether or not this restaurant is probably closed. If I didn't make any money, that's my fault for making that decision to go out at a bad time to go out.
Right.
That's part of running a business. But at the same time, when you decide that you can take control, now all of a sudden you don't have to rely on DoorDash. And you know what? Okay, DoorDash cuts your pay to $2.50, and that sucks. It's, but you know what? If they don't pay enough, then Uber Eats might pay more. And so you get to make those kind of choices.
Right. Uh-huh.
And when you do that, all of a sudden, when you decide that you're the one in control, all of a sudden, DoorDash has no control over you. Uber, Lyft, Grubhub, none of those companies have control over you because you get to make the decisions and you get to choose and you get to look around and you're putting it up, you're turning it into kind of a bidding war among your customers. And if at some point none of them are paying enough, then you realize that either your business needs to change or it needs to close. But you get to make that choice too.
Right.
And that I think is the best thing that you can do in the light of all of the garbage that some of these companies pull off is just decide I'm in control.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to Sergio from Rideshare guy, and he never agrees with Harry. He's like the polar opposite of Harry.
Oh,
But he's been a driver for a while, and I had him on, and he was telling me how right now, he's been doing this forever, and he's like when Harry started the Rideshare guy, he would put out an article, and Sergio would put an article out on a blog he had on just dissecting Harry's article on how Harry was wrong on everything. So what did Harry do? He hired him.
which you got to give credit to Harry for that.
Yeah, smart move, right? So now he's got him, and the agreement that they had was that Sergio writes. He's the main contributor for the rideshare side of the rideshare guy,
Mm-hmm.
and he has nobody's allowed to edit his material. He posts whatever he wants about it. Harry's not allowed to get involved. Nobody's allowed to get involved. He's allowed to write whatever he wants. And when I had him on, he was telling me that right now he's doing better than in rideshare than he was before the pandemic, during the pandemic, all this. He's like, I don't go out unless I'm making $50, $60 an hour in LA right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear about all these drivers in LA who can't make any money. He doesn't have a Tesla or he's not driving XL. He's just driving X with a car. He just knows how to get out there. And I mean, like, he had a challenge going with delivery drivers that was supposed to go for a month, and they only ran it for 2 weeks because the average delivery driver was pulling about $19 an hour. Sergio was pulling 55 to 60. I mean, it was so not even close that they just ended it. They just called it after 2 weeks. It was supposed to be
Yeah.
a 4 week thing. And they're like, dude, he's like, you can't catch me. Even if I don't work the next 2 weeks, you won't catch me.
Yep.
I'll still
Yep.
be above you. So it's weird. It's in, like you were, like we were talking about, like, people aren't going back to rideshare. Even the ones who did rideshare before the pandemic, who pivoted to delivery, aren't going back. And yet they notice that delivery's not paying them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say it about every market. I know some people
Right.
still do well on delivery, but I do. You can say overall, we it's going down a bit. I mean,
I would say so. I would say
people
so.
are going. I mean, I see it in my neighborhood in Park Hill. People are going out
Right.
again.
Well, and I
It's
think that's a lot of it. There's a few things going on. One, you've got a lot more people going out and doing delivery now.
right.
The market is just flooded. So there's more drivers. And I think there are fewer opportunities. There are fewer orders out there. With Postmates getting swallowed up, there's one less major player out there. Although I don't know, around here, they never were that busy to begin with. But, so you've got all those things going on. And I think you got, more drivers, fewer opportunities or fewer deliveries going on. People don't have as much money as they did. And so I think the boom for delivery it's still busier overall than what it was, but you've got an awful lot more people doing those deliveries now. So it is harder to, pull off that $30 an hour or whatever.
Right.
And I don't think it's going to get easier. It might for a few months when you get into the winter, but
Right.
by the time this summer hits, I'm not sure how good it's going to be. And
Unless
so,
we were to stay in a pandemic state forever,
well, there's that.
which kind of, all jokes aside, I sometimes feel like it's kind of happening. Like, they're just kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
now it's the Omni, but did that kill anybody? It killed one person. We're just waiting for more. We want more to die so that we
Yeah.
can claim that this is real.
But
It's like,
I mean, it's like you go, well, it was like Black Friday, and I woke up really early, just not able to sleep. And there was something I'd been thinking about getting and everything like that. So I went out to Best Buy at 6 a.m, right when everything's open. And years past, you used to have this huge line of people,
right,
and
fights.
and yeah, and all these places would just be packed early on Black Friday. You go out there and it was just like, well, there's people around and stuff like that, and the stores are open, but it just felt normal.
Yeah, that's
And
what everybody told me, was that Black Friday was just like another day.
yeah,
That there
and
was nothing like Black Friday of years past.
and I think it's going to take a long time for people to feel comfortable going out in crowds like that
Right.
again. And that may help with a lot of things, and that might help keep the delivery thing going. But I don't know, you've got, at some point, I still feel like all of this shutdown and stuff like that is going to catch up with us in some way,
Yeah, of
and
course.
they could only kind of tape it together with the stimulus for so long. And so all those things are kind of catching up. So there's that possibility that things are going to slow down. That doesn't mean that we're doomed. It
No.
just means that you have to keep your eyes open. It's just like if you're running a business. When we were in telecom back in, um, what do I want to say, 9/11, and all of a sudden everything went down. As far as businesses quit spending money for a while because they were just scared to death of what's going on.
Right.
And, it's like anytime you're running a business, there's a chance that things can slow down, or if you were in the horse and buggy business, at some point your business dried up because there wasn't the demand for it.
Right.
And so you've got a choice though, what you do with that. It's like, do you keep going with what you're doing, or do you pivot, or do you move on to something else? And here's the beautiful thing about doing a lot of this gig work. You can't as much maybe with rideshare, but you can with delivery. And that is that you're spending a lot of time in the car, and it's a great opportunity to learn about whatever might be next for you. Because all of a sudden you're getting paid to drive around and listen to podcasts or to listen to audiobooks or any of that stuff.
Learn another language.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Those
and
Rosetta
that's where,
Stones and things like that,
when I started deciding I'm going to do the website, and I spent a lot of time learning all sorts of stuff about how to do it, how to market it, how to do all these different things. And I was getting paid for it, 25, 30 bucks an hour. I'm getting paid to be able to learn this stuff while I'm in between deliveries. And I think that that's the thing that can be fantastic about it, is that you've got opportunities ahead. When you're running a business, though, when you're thinking of it like a business owner, you're always looking for where you can go next, rather than saying, I've got to rely on DoorDash, or I've got to rely on these guys here. You don't have to rely on anybody. At some point, maybe they may not be the best customer for you, but you've got the opportunities to look around and see, where can you go with this next? What can you do? How can you learn from this whole thing of being self-employed to spin off a totally different kind of business that has nothing to do with what you're doing? And so, it's like, and that gets back to that whole thing. Take control, and you make the decisions, and you look for the opportunities and grow from this. If you want to be stuck in it, or I don't want to say stuck, but if you want to do delivery for the rest of your life, it's probably not going to happen. I'm going to guess that in a year to 2 years, it's not going to be as easy to make as much money.
Yeah.
It's moving that direction. Maybe it'll get better at some point. Maybe something will happen that we had no idea. But
I mean, if they keep
the funny thing is,
people, I don't know that might change. That could be the one thing that I could see change it. Otherwise, I think you're exactly right. I think that's going to become, if things keep getting better,
right,
like from the pandemic, I think that delivery is going to be very, very difficult to make a living on.
I can't go out right now and I can't hit those $40 an hour days like I used to do so easily in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
And it's harder to maintain the 30. But you know what? It's like, when I look at my numbers now compared to what they were in 2019, it's like, it's still better.
Yeah.
And it's real easy to compare things just to what you knew the least or the most recently. It's kind of like when we look at gas prices, and when we make a comparison, we're always comparing to the middle of the pandemic, when it was, dropped down to about $1 a gallon.
Yeah.
And that's the comparison we always make. We forget about 2006 when it was $4 a gallon,
Right.
And
I think we we have to be, Ron and I are talking about Colorado because each state its own with gas. But
sure.
I forgot even that like 264 is kind of an average in Colorado. Like, not exactly that, but you know what I mean? Like, and then it went down so much for so long,
right,
that, like you're saying, when it went back up to what it was, you're like, what is
I know.
this skyrocketing?
And it is. I mean, it went up at a faster rate. If you compared it to 2 years ago, it is still high, but it's not the same thing as like when you're comparing it to $1 a gallon, because, that was kind of an abnormal type of thing. That wasn't the norm.
There were no cars on the road. There was nobody using gas. So they were having to give it away.
Yeah.
almost. Like,
Yeah.
okay, please, just $1 a gallon. You can
Oh, I
fill up your
love those
car.
days when there were no cars on the road. You could drive through downtown Denver and
I
not
know.
have anybody out there. And you could pull right up to the restaurant and walk in without having to figure out where to park. It was so beautiful.
I know. I
I
could
miss
drive
that.
down
But
Colfax and see nobody. And that's
yeah,
not even heard of.
yeah.
I mean, for those of you
And
that haven't been to Denver, that's not even heard
no.
of.
And so I don't know, it's easy to compare to a year ago and feel like the sky is falling. When you can compare to 2 years ago and realize, oh, we're still doing better. And, you know, it's like you gotta kind of look at everything with a much bigger picture. And so, kind of where I'm going with that is like right now, I can still make more than I made a couple of years ago before the pandemic and still do that fairly easily. So, and there's a lot of ways where I used to look at like 2 years ago as kind of the glory days of delivery, when
Right.
Grubhub was hopping, and I look
Right.
back now and it's like, oh, you know what? I'm still doing better than then.
Right.
And so it's all kind of like what you compare it to, I guess.
Well, before the pandemic, people weren't into the delivery thing too much.
No, but there weren't as many drivers either. And
Right. But I just mean
so,
like people were like, I'm just going to
yeah,
go out to dinner. What do you mean? And
sure.
if I want delivery, I'll just call Domino's or whatever you do.
Yeah,
Like your pattern. So your pattern wasn't
sure.
to use Uber Eats and call for the food that you just go 2 blocks down the street for.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, people are left and right use Uber Eats from McDonald's now.
Yep.
I mean,
I used to, I
that
used to
speaks
talk
volumes
about,
right there.
I used to talk about doing it as I used to talk about the 40 cent rule. Like you decide your deliveries based on 40 cents a minute, which is $24 an hour. And I can remember when people were like, that's insane. There's no way you can get anywhere close to that. It's like, you know, anything over $15 just seemed so out of place. And now we're at a time where we're kind of worried about, we're not making as much money, but you're still making, $20 an hour or something like that. And it's like, so it's like there's areas where there's ways where it's not as lucrative as it was a year ago,
Right.
but it's not over yet. And I am concerned. I do think it's going to get harder and harder to maintain that. I don't think the amount that you can make in deliveries is going to be going up. I don't know what to think about rideshare, what that's going to be like.
Yeah, rideshare still isn't fixed from the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been broken since day one, but I mean, it
yeah,
isn't.
well, there's that.
It was completely broken during the pandemic. Like in
Yeah.
one day, it went from, whatever it is globally. We were just talking about this the other day, like 18 million rides per day globally for Uber.
Mm-hmm.
And it went from that to zero.
Yeah. Because I'm not getting in the car with a stranger.
Well, and everybody went to lockdown in
Yep.
April of 2020. I mean, we were told stay at home, don't go anywhere.
Yep.
So the few people I knew driving were just taking people to hospitals and stuff. And I'm not talking about patients. I'm talking about like doctors and
Sure.
people going
Sure.
to work. But there
Yep.
weren't, I mean, you and I know it was tumbleweeds. There weren't people outside. People weren't even walking their dogs, man.
Yep. So, but that's the thing is you don't know what next year is going to be, but you can keep an eye out on what's out there, what's available, what are the opportunities, and at some point, I think delivery is not going to be as great of an option. Rideshare may not be as great of an option. That the gig economy may not be the best way to go, and it may not be for you right now. It all depends on you. But the whole thing is, I think there's opportunities. I think there's still a lot that you can do with all of that, but it's just like any business that just because it's good now doesn't mean that it will be in a year or 2 years. It doesn't mean that it won't be, but you've got the opportunity to make the decisions and, find out how can you fine tune what you're doing, or how can you use those lessons to move on to something even better.
That's what I
I,
was just gonna say, was that like you and I had previous um like independent contractor work before this,
right.
and we were, not only were we doing the gig economy before the pandemic, because a lot of people came into the gig economy at the pandemic, a
Yep.
lot. So a lot of these people are just, hey, we've been doing this since April of 2020. So okay, well, I was doing it for years before that, so were you. But I also had independent contractor jobs before that. So I always am building, like, in my head, whenever I'm doing anything, like, how can I make more money? And I'm not talking about on that platform. I'm talking about in my life.
Right.
Like, what else could I be doing? What's a new angle on something? And that's taken me to a lot of places. And I don't know if a lot of gig workers who jumped in April 2020 feel that way or think that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if
That's
they're always thinking, like, how do I earn best? What's my personal value? What's my worth? And what do I want to do? I mean, because you
and it,
might, if you search your brain, you might find something you want to do that nobody's doing, and you might go, "Why? It must not work because nobody's doing it." But it might be something that could work big.
yeah. I think it really kind of it depends on how they're looking at it. So if you're looking at it as that DoorDash is in control or Lyft is in control, and
Right.
it all depends on what they give me. There's probably not as much thought going into it. It's more like, okay, it's just like any other job. They give me the task, I do the task, and that's it.
Right.
And so, but I think if you're looking at it, once again, you're going back and looking at it as a business, and you're deciding that it is my fault if it doesn't work, rather than Ubers or DoorDashes, then you start looking for other ways that you can do things, and you start thinking more like, oh, okay, I could make more money if I do things a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you got a lot of people that they don't, it never even enters their mind that you could make more money. It's all a crapshoot. it's
Right.
it's it's all what the DoorDash gods give to you.
Right.
And you get a lot of people, what, they go out and they do that and they're totally happy with that, and that's fine. um but
But like we were just talking about, I mean, at some point when the pandemic really starts dying down,
yeah.
that whole thing's going to change a bit, because you would need like half of the Door Dashers to drop off to be able to even keep the level you're at now of earning.
Mm-hmm.
And will that happen? I don't know. It might become like you were talking about earlier, like we've always talked about almost every time I think I've had you on or I've been on your podcast,
Yeah,
is it going to just turn into a delivery race to the bottom like the rideshare companies were?
sure. I'm not sure they can go a whole lot closer to the bottom, to be honest. you know
They are
did you
kind of
ever see
trolling that bottom right now.
did you see that TikTok that the guy did? Of course, there's all sorts of them, but there was one that I remember seeing, and he was talking about how don't tip that much on DoorDash, how you don't need to, and don't worry about the whole gas and things like that, because I think the way he said it is, I'm reasonably sure that um, that they're paying you enough to cover your car and time and everything like that, and the tip is just something. And it's like, dude, you have no idea how much we're getting. And
Right.
you know I mean, you go out there and you're only getting $2 or $3 from DoorDash,
Right.
and they can't cut it a whole lot more than that. I'm sure they'll try, but they can't cut it a whole lot more than that. And but it's like, if the tipping dries up,
Right.
that's when everything is going to go,
And
go south.
and it's funny you say that, because that's a fear of mine too. Because if I mean, you and I remember that when rideshare came along, they made it so that even though all of us who were using it knew, you tip a driver, you tip a bartender, you tip a server, you tip those people, but they made it very clear you don't tip these people. We don't
Yeah.
allow it through the app. Don't worry about it. You don't need to tip them. They're paid. Like they very, very clearly made it for years. No, 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 no. This
Yeah.
isn't a tipping environment. Don't worry about it. Because they wanted
Yeah.
to make these rides look like they just cost this and you don't need to tip.
That's one of the areas where they were really trying to kind of compete with the cabs. So it's like, oh, we're going to pay the drivers well enough that you don't need to tip.
Right.
And I mean, they almost, yeah, discouraged it. And
Which they did pay the drivers well enough in the beginning when they were
sure,
populating areas. So it
sure.
did appear that way. But I mean, I think we all even knew that eventually,
Yeah.
same type of thing. Eventually, this won't be paying like this.
And here's where I think I see that there was like a big wake up call on Uber's part. Because yeah, when I started doing delivery and I started with Uber Eats and it was okay, but you know, it wasn't a whole lot. And then I got onto Grubhub and it was night and day because Grubhub and DoorDash too were encouraging the customers to tip when they placed the order. And it was like there was a tip on almost every order for those guys. And with Uber Eats, it was like a tip out of, one out of every 10 drivers or something like that,
Right.
because they were still, in fact, they didn't make it easy to tip. But what they paid in delivery fees blew everybody else out of the water.
Right.
That it was like you could pull off a $15 delivery without a tip if you're driving far enough and it took long enough or something like that. And, between all of the different incentives and things like that, and Uber Eats was paying a lot more money out of their own pockets for drivers. And the sea change was late in 2019 when it was the game changer. And they did two things basically. First, they allowed customers to tip when you place the order. Way back at the time, you didn't know how to tip somebody through the app. Therefore, before I started, you could not tip through the app.
Right.
And then they had changed that, but it still wasn't easy. And that was the one time I ever used to give out cards to customers that just said, "Thank you. Please let me know how I did by rating me."
Mm-hmm.
That was how I asked for a tip.
Right.
Because
just to get them back into the app.
You got them back into the app and you had to rate somebody before it would ask you to tip. So
Right.
what I'm doing is asking them to rate me, because then the app is going to ask them to tip. And all of a sudden I'm getting tips out of, 50% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, yeah, it was not easy to tip. And Uber really, their thinking was that if customers thought they had to tip, then they wouldn't spend as much money or something like that. And they might go on to somewhere else. But at, the end of 2019, they were kind of like, oh, all right, we're going to let customers place the tip when they order. In fact, they started it right then. And about that time is when they really dropped, they quit publicizing the formula that they used, and they cut the delivery fees about 40%. But the customers were tipping more now.
Right.
And, Uber Eats figured out, oh, if we can get the customers to tip, we don't have to pay as much.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where they've gotten smart in some ways, in that they realize that if we can encourage the customers to tip, then we don't have to pay as much, but the drivers still get their money. And right. Nobody really notices anything. And there for a while, honestly, even though Uber Eats was paying less in delivery fees, all of a sudden they became so much better to deliver for than anybody else, at least in my experience.
Right.
Because they finally figured that part out, and because customers started catching on to that. But it's interesting because then at the same time, when Prop 22 went into effect and they started having to pay extra. And so in California, the gig companies had to start adding surcharges on or upping their delivery fees. And all of a sudden, then they were like, oh, we're going to start discouraging tipping now, because then customers won't notice the increase in pay, so it's a weird balancing game between all these things and what they do with the tipping and how all of that works. So I'm curious to see how it looks going forward. And but I think as long as customers are tipping, it can still be a lucrative type of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and this kind of goes back to this whole thing where I've talked about, is it a good idea maybe for somebody to go to an employee model? Because what happens if all of a sudden, let's say Grubhub decides we're going to use employees and we're going to get away from this tipping thing, but we're going to be damn good at getting that food delivered on time,
right,
with a great customer experience. And all of a sudden, the restaurants love Grubhub more than anybody else, and the customers love Grubhub more than anybody else. And will that get them to the point that they can charge whatever they want to charge?
Right. Or exclusive deals and
yeah. And and so
some
they
restaurants go exclusive with Grubhub because of the new model.
Yeah, because now all of a sudden they are fantastic at getting that food delivered while all the others still suck.
Right.
And that's where I wonder if an employee model could be feasible. I would hate if that happens because that takes away one more option for me.
Exactly. I mean, for me it actually just takes it out of my life. It's not going to be an option. It's gone.
Exactly.
Like I don't even want to hear about it anymore. If that's a W-2, forget it.
Yep. And I
don't need a boss telling me how to deliver food.
Exactly. And I
and I'm not, if I can't, I kind of like rolling the dice when I do gig work because I know that I communicate well with customers. I say I'm on my way.
Sure.
Things that won't let them cancel as a rideshare passenger. Sure. I do the right things. Not everybody goes out of their way to do all those steps. And when you do, you're more likely to get a tip. You're more likely to get a good rating, just anything. I mean, it's just more likely to go better for you. But if you're just doing those basics, picking it up, this restaurant's too busy, I'm going to drop it. I'll take this order instead. And you're just kind of rushing through everything, not really giving a crap. You got to remember that on the other ends, there's a customer. And in the bag you delivered, the restaurant might have even messed up what they did in there. So that's still on you because otherwise they're going to rate you bad if they try and contact you and say, hey, this is all the wrong food. And if you're just like, whatever, dude, I don't care. Like you should expect a 1-star. You should. I mean, these people just paid for food. They didn't get the right stuff. It took too long. The experience sucked. They're not going to tip you, but they're also going to rate you bad.
Yeah.
That should not shock you. I mean, it shouldn't. It shouldn't shock people if that kind of stuff's happening.
Yeah. And the stuff I see all the time, that drivers do, and then they're shocked that the customer wasn't happy. It's like, were you paying attention at all?
Right. Yeah.
And yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting just to see. I think that there's going to be some big changes still to come. Because I just don't think that the way everybody's doing things is sustainable. And what those changes are going to be, I don't know. I throw out all these ideas. This is what I think could happen, but I'm also not that deep of a thinker to think all of the repercussions. Because what happens if you try and get, you go to an employee model, let's say, and maybe it could work, but what happens then if you can't get enough employees and now you're still stuck?
Or your turnover rate is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that's the other problem with an employee
now you
thing.
got people claiming unemployment that's coming on you. Like they worked for you for 3 weeks even. Oh, screw this. Yeah. And now they're claiming unemployment. And I mean, is that going to fall in the franchise if that goes to that model? And does a franchise go out of business? So now is the area not served until they get a new franchisee in there? I mean,
and here's the thing about any kind of job you do is that so much relies on who you're working for.
Right.
And how well can you stomach having to actually work for them? And it's like, great. Maybe you get a job, it's guaranteed, but these guys are terrible to work for.
Right.
And, you know, even if you're making more money, is it worth it? Sometimes when you need the money, you do whatever you got to do. But there's all that stuff that's involved with that. And I can't imagine any of these companies being a good employer. I can't imagine any one of these companies being the kind of place that, yeah, I would feel good going to work for them.
Right.
I don't believe for a second that any of them would treat me fairly or be reasonable or any of that stuff. Right. And so, and that's going to be part of the problem. It could be a good model, but
at that point,
you got to be really
McDonald's
good at doing
pays
it.
$18 an hour. So if they're going to go to an employee model and it's going to pay $18 an hour and it's your car, it's like, well, now maybe I do want to look at those W-2 jobs I've been driving by everywhere.
Sure.
I don't want to do this because that's me for sure. If I had to choose and I had to take a W-2, it's absolutely not going to be for any of these gig platforms.
Yeah.
I can 100% guarantee that. So I'm good with it as long as it's an independent contractor status. Once it becomes not, I probably have a better status to go out and get other jobs that if I had to, and okay, but that's going to limit me on other things. But some people might, just go, well, if you're going to do that, if you're going to pay me 17, I can go make 19 at McDonald's.
Exactly.
If it's going to be a shift anyway, I might as well just do this because then my car isn't wear and tear. I don't have I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think that that's going to work. We'll have to see what the W-2. It'll be interesting to see what DoorDash does in New York, but I think that they're in a position, after you talked about it, especially kind of reminded me that they're in a position to kind of sweep it under the carpet if it goes bad, since they're not doing it with everybody and they're just kind of taking this select 1 hour group and saying, okay, you guys are W-2. It might be easy to go, this failed, just let's forget about that.
Did you ever have, it sounds a little off the topic, but were you ever at any of these places where McDonald's tried out like one of their concept restaurants? We used to have one when I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska. They opened up a restaurant that they called the 3-in-1. And so it was an ice cream place. It was a bakery, and it was kind of a mid-level dine-in place. And I think it was actually a 4-in-1. They called it a 3-in-1, but it was actually a 4-in-1 because you could still do drive-through and get their traditional menu. The food was good. It was pretty good. It's hard to imagine just saying anything like that about a McDonald's, but I really liked it. But it never took off. And I think because people just couldn't put better food together with McDonald's, as long as their name was on it, anything upscale wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And so it never went anywhere. But, McDonald's is what made me think of that is like what you said with a DoorDash. They can try some things like that and it could fail miserably and it's not going to hurt anything. And I think that's what, McDonald's tried fried chicken in some places and it failed miserably. But it's like, okay.
Coca-Cola trying to be Pepsi in the whatever that was with new Coke.
Yeah.
That was just awful. It wasn't old Coke that we all like, and it wasn't Pepsi. It was like just this awful thing. It's like, what are you doing?
No. Yeah.
And it took them a long time to get out of that too.
It did. Yeah.
I remember New Coke being around for like a year plus, like before they even brought back Coke Classic. But even then, they still tried to make that secondary. I know.
And it was kind of like it took them a few years before they found, oh, this is a bad idea. Let's just get rid of the old stuff. I guess my point there is even if it was 2 years of New Coke, whatever it was, because it was a long time, they were able to just jump right back to old Coke and bring their shares right back to where they were. Sure.
I mean, it was,
and that's the thing I'm hoping is going to be the case, kind of like with Uber Eats, with their little experiment in some places that, hiding hiding some of the delivery information. I hope that it's a test that they realize is just a big failure and they move on rather than them taking that nationwide.
Right.
And, some of those things you just kind of hang back and it's like, okay, watch it. And you just hope that it is just a test and that it doesn't go nationwide.
Right.
So some of the stuff like DoorDash is doing out there,
Right.
you just kind of hold back and watch and everything like that. And, but you also got to be ready for the fact that they might like whatever it is and take
Right.
that on a bigger scale.
Right. So be ready to pivot again. Always be ready to pivot is my, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just as long as you're running a
Yeah.
business, it doesn't matter what kind of business you're doing. You're doing your lightsaber, your laser stuff, with my website, things like that. You always got to be ready. If Google decides that they want to change how they do things, if you're a YouTuber and YouTube changes their algorithm and all of a sudden you're not getting the people coming in and you're not getting the advertising, what do? You always got to be ready for those things. And that's just the fact with doing delivery. Always be ready.
Yeah.
And I am looking at it, it's like, holy cow.
Yeah.
You got a lot of cutting to do today.
Yeah, I know. But I never cut. I never do.
Oh, that's true.
So so yeah, speaking of that, so what are your final thoughts going into the new year? Or I don't know. What are your thoughts for gig workers? Is it all gloom and doom or is it,
Oh, hell no.
is
I
it,
think 2022 is what you decide to make of it.
yeah.
And so if you decide that you're going to take control and you're going to make the decisions and you're going to look for ways that you can learn and grow and do more with what you're doing, it can be a fantastic year, no matter what DoorDash or Uber Eats or Uber or Lyft or Grubhub or any of these companies do.
Right.
Because you're taking control and you're taking your own life into your own hands. And it starts with the choices you make with delivery, but I think that it can grow into just your whole life. And as long as you take the attitude that it's like, it's in my hands, I think it can be a fantastic year.
Right.
Even when it looks like it sucks for everybody else.
Right.
It all depends on how you approach it.
Right. And do people go back to W-2 jobs that were W-2 before the pandemic?
Yeah.
Part of it's going to play on the pandemic. I think that 2022 is going to be the best year since the pandemic anyway, like of the 2020, 2021. Sure. I don't think there was much difference in those 2 years. They were both kind of crappy. And so yeah. I honestly, at least me, I have hope for 2022 anyway.
I think so. If nothing else, 2022, we're going to know more about where things are going.
Yeah.
I think that, there's going to be,
it won't be as cloudy.
Yeah. By the end of the year, I think we're going to have a better idea of where things are going with the whole independent contractor status.
Right.
I think we're starting to get there anyway. And that makes it hard. I think we're going to get a better feel for what things are like on, the business side and where things are good and where they're not so good. And that'll make it easier for us to make decisions. As long as you got information, you can make decisions. So I think it can be a really good year, but it really is, it's up to us. And I think that's the biggest message I've got for anybody is you've got what it takes to make it a great year. And I think you've got more control over what kind of year it can be than you might give yourself credit for. And I think as long as you go at it with that attitude, it can turn into something more than just doing delivery. The one problem with delivery, when I went into delivery, I thought, yeah, I'd be happy if I can get up to about $15 an hour. I had no idea that I could make as much more.
Right.
I had no idea that it would actually end up paying more than what I made as a business manager.
Right.
But at the same time, it's kind of like it's better than I would have imagined, but there's still a ceiling.
Right.
But because of what I've learned doing this and everything like that, it opens the door for other things. And I think that's where you want to really look at it is don't just look at the deliveries, but look at you and look at where you can grow. And if you're deciding to make those changes, I think you can make 2022 a fantastic year and maybe, a year like you've never imagined it could be.
Right.
That's my
I agree
final
with
thoughts.
that. I do think the only thing I'd add to it is for those of you just going through the grind every day is to start, and it's not a diss, but to start opening your eyes to maybe other things you could do.
Sure.
Like we've been talking about, like just kind of be open to the universe kind of thing, you know?
Well, yeah.
I
And,
mean,
and,
be open to what you might be seeing and thinking, no, I can't do that. But like be open to it. Be
sure.
more receptive to what your brain's telling you because there's something to
Yeah.
be said for when when you're talking to yourself, there's something to be said for that. It's not
Yeah.
always a weird thing.
And so much of it is your mindset. So much of it is how you look at it.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons that I think that delivery or rideshare or any of that can be a great launching point is because it puts you in a spot where your mindset really does make a lot of difference.
Oh yeah.
And how you approach it and what you do makes a lot of difference. And once you get to that point where it's kind of like, oh, I'm in control of this now and I get to make the decisions, I think that opens the door for taking that so much further than you could ever get driving people around or delivering food or something like that. Because I think that's just such a fundamental skill or a fundamental way of looking at things that once you've decided that, okay, I can do more and I'm going to do what it takes to be able to do more, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think that's one thing I love about the gig economy is it opens people's eyes. They maybe never thought of themselves as a business owner before. They never thought they could run a business.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden they start like, oh yeah, if I go over here, I'm making more money. And they start realizing that their decisions are making a difference.
Right.
And I think when you start believing in yourself that way, all the places that can take you that are so far beyond gig economy are just incredible out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so I kind of feel the same way. I feel like next year could be huge for everybody, even just what you are doing right now. Just keep it up kind of thing. Like just stick with the program, play it through and get into the new year and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like I don't know what it is, but I just feel like something's going to shift here soon.
It's, it's going to be fun to watch. It'll be maddening to watch, but
yeah.
I think it's going to be an interesting year. May you live in interesting times.
So the last thing I want to ask too before we bounce out here, because we have been running a bit, but what's up with you and the website and gig work and any of that coming into the new year? Or
nothing really much different there. Entrecourier.com, just continuing to put stuff up. This is a good time of year for me because this is when people start looking for information about taxes.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of information on that. And so, I just keep putting up stuff as far as, about the business of the gig economy is really what that's all about. And then, one of the changes probably for me, as far as the gig work itself, is that I'm, trying to get into a lot more different things. So, for 3+ years, it was DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, and a little bit of Postmates.
Right.
And, now, and I think especially with Postmates going away or being, swallowed up by Uber Eats, I think it's important just to have as many options out there as available. I keep thinking, oh, maybe I should give Instacart a try, because mostly so that I can kind of write about my experiences with that.
Yeah.
So I've been doing, I've done some VHO, which is like delivering Hello Fresh packages. I've done some Deliver That, which is catering orders, and I keep looking for some good opportunities to finally grab my first curry delivery. And just to start doing some different things. Partly because I think because of the website growing, it gives me a little more freedom to take chances on some things that I don't have to worry as much about whether it pays as well for me,
Right.
but at least to still kind of give some perspective. So, I think that's the thing where I'll be trying out a lot of different things and using that to kind of write my experience and let people know at least, hey, this is what worked for me. This is what didn't work for me. This is why I liked it. This is why you might like it. This is why you might not like it. And so hopefully more of that coming up.
So for those of you that don't know, his website will be in the show notes. It's entrecourier.com. Everybody should go take a look at it. If you're in the gig economy, Ron's got all kinds of stuff up there, and it's been up for a while. So just go play with the website for a while. I mean, it really does have a lot of info on there. So, and his articles are always good too. He's one of those guys that can put up good articles. So I'm
Appreciate
always
that.
giving you props, man. I like your stuff. So, thanks,
Appreciate that.
Ron, for coming
Thank
on,
you.
and everybody have a awesome Happy New Year. I guess that's happening this week.
I know.
We're
I still feel like it should be
days out.
August.
5 days out from a new year. So okay. Well, thank
Awesome.
you, Ron.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. Happy holidays, and we'll talk soon.
Have a great new year. Thank you.
Yep.